What else was it about those male leaders that stood out?
They used instinct, they used intuition, they were interested in how something felt, not just what you thought.
Yeah.
They had a approachability about them, and they were men who had full lives right outside the work. They didn't need to be defined by the job. They
Mm.
were people who had good values, and I felt had a good sense of priority about what was important.
Mm.
And for me that was amazing because I had two small children and they got it. They were family men. They were able to empathize with others' situations, and for me that was such a blessing to have somebody that I knew just got it.
Before we get into the podcast, I'd like to say a big thank you to our Season 3 sponsors, Lightside Financial Planning. They're a Liverpool-based company, fiercely independent and dedicated to making money conversations easy to navigate. If you'd like a conversation with one of their friendly team members, there's a link to their website in the show notes. So welcome to another episode of the pod, and today I'm joined by Caroline Britton. So me and Caroline had an exchange on Instagram, and what came across through our exchanges was how passionate Caroline is about men, about male leadership, about the characteristics of male leadership, transforming male leaders, and I'm also fascinated by her opinion on the next step for male leadership in this modern world. Caroline is a powerful, intuitive coach, an expert in waking up leaders, entrepreneurs, and public figures to live a life of freedom, purpose, and joy. She specializes in being an agent of change for people who are ready to transform their lives. Caroline is a gifted energy worker, mentor, leadership coach, and guide, and is frequently described as a magic maker by those who work with her. Caroline's innate gifts to be able to unlock people's connection, potential, and power has transformed thousands of lives. And Caroline is the author of Coming Home to You, and she's been featured in Forbes, The Telegraph, GQ, Red Magazine, and numerous other publications. Caroline, it sounds like I'm going to be talking to a rock star.
What an introduction, my
You know,
goodness.
it's so good to connect with you. Welcome. I feel a real good energy about you. We're going to have a great conversation. We just had a little bit of a natter beforehand. Welcome to the pod, Caroline. Before we get into the depths, and I know men are very close to your heart, and you have a beautiful way of helping men to get out of their heads and into the bodies and into the hearts. Before we get into that, because it's also a fascination of mine, what would you like my audience, the viewers, the listeners, to know about Caroline Britton before we dive in?
Do you know what? I think it's always powerful to know where this journey began for me. So I actually worked in the corporate world in a big management consultancy for 14 years before I set up this business about 9 years ago. I worked in a really, really male environment, and an environment that praised and prioritized logic, rationale, like what you thought, data analysis. And it was in that environment. I worked there for a long time. It was a great company in many ways. I noticed that I was disconnecting more and more from like my true purpose and calling. And I think that experience of working in the corporate world has led me to want to work with male leaders because I understand the corporate environment. I understand, I've worked with sports professionals, I've worked with actors, I've worked with all sorts of people. I understand the struggle that a lot of men have with professional environments they're put in, society at large. And I've also seen the power that when you work with a man or a woman on getting them out of their head and into their heart, like it's mind blowing, as you know, the transformation that can happen.
Yeah, great. So, what happened when you left the corporate world, Caroline? How do your life shape? Was it a fall from grace? Was it a midlife crisis? What happened to you, and
I've had all of those.
what brought you to this moment?
Well, do you know what? You've heard that phrase, like the universe throws you like a pebble, a rock, and then a boulder. Well, that was my experience. I just was not listening. So it was after the birth of my second child that things just started going wrong. Like I was feeling a real resistance at work. I had this niggle that I was supposed to be on a different path, but honestly, I ignored it. I was just so full of fear. Had two small children, had money on credit cards, and I've always been in the corporate world since I'd left university. And I ignored it. And I thought, what I'll do is I'll just work harder, just push a bit harder in the corporate world. I'll get another promotion. I'll do this, I'll do that. Every time I pushed, the universe just like pushed back at me. And then in the end, I ended up getting pretty sick. I got shingles all over my body. I had really bad burnout, and I got signed off by the doctor for 4 weeks. I only took 2 because I was adamant that I didn't want to be out of work. I look back and just think, gosh, but I was adamant I didn't want to be out for work for long. And then I actually slowed down and started listening to my body, and it was then that the whispers became louder, and it said, this is not your path, this is not what you're supposed to do. And then all these magic doors started opening. I couldn't see the full picture, but I got a sense that I wanted to study as a coach, so I did that. I started running some workshops locally. Amazingly, Nike got hold of one, Red Magazine got hold of one. The business started growing. I started getting referrals, and then it kind of grew from there. So I definitely had what I call like the divine intervention, right? But it took a while, and I was very resistant to that change.
Right. There's a couple of things coming to me that I want to ask you as you speak. And I'm really intrigued the thread that this is going to go in. The first question is around when you worked in the corporate space, I'm telling myself that you were so-called managed or led by a lot of male leaders. Mm-hmm. What were some of your frustrations in those days around how men tried to lead?
Sure, interestingly, I had a really positive experience with the 2 men that were my direct bosses. They became friends. It was actually their boss, who was a woman, that I had the most difficulty with. And she was embodying a lot of the male qualities I think that she thought she was supposed to have. But if I was to look around me at the wider like management group, there were some really good eggs there for sure. But there was also this like energy and culture of men who were all about the bravado, defined entirely by the ego. These are really, really bright, well-paid, well-educated men. And, I don't want to generalize with everybody because, as I said, there were lots of good people, but there was definitely this theme of like who could be louder and who could push harder and who could dominate more space. And I think that, that has a ripple effect on everybody. I saw a lot of the female leaders thinking they then had to do it.
Yeah, that's the danger, isn't it?
And this is why I'm so passionate about the work, is when you work with the leaders and they do the work, the ripple effect goes all the way through the industry, it goes through the company, because people are learning from what these people do, not what they say. They're literally embodiment of what people are aspiring to. And there were some really heart-led men there, and they made a massive difference, right? And you could feel the energy of it. And it's like people wanted to, I don't love the word follow, but people wanted to be with them and work with them because they were inspired, not because they had to. And I think that's the shift that we're seeing, right? It used to be do as I say. I don't feel like that's where it is now. I feel like it's about what you embody as a leader, and whether people look at you and think, yeah, you're the kind of person that I'd aspire to be or be around, right?
Yeah. Okay. So it sounds like, if you like, the shadow side of male leadership that you saw was kind of bravado, taking up space, who's got the biggest cock, who could dominate, control, push, drive, identity around who's in work the longest, who can work the longest hours, and all those kind of fear-based male shadowy behaviours. And what I'm hearing is with the 2 male leaders that you actually were inspired by, it was more heart-led. What else was it about those male leaders that stood out?
they used instinct, they used intuition, they were interested in how something felt, not just what you thought.
Yeah.
They had a approachability about them, and they were men who had full lives right outside the work. They didn't need to be defined by the job. They were people who had good values, and I felt had a good sense of priority about what was important. And for me, that was amazing because I had two small children, and they got it. They were family men. They were able to empathize with others' situations, and for me, that was such a blessing to have somebody that I knew just got it.
Mm, mm. Wonderful. Before I go deeper into your work with men, because I'm fascinated in how you do that, the how of your work with men.
Yeah.
I just like to go on a side path, if you will, and maybe it's potentially a little bit controversial, but what I want to ask you as a woman is, I see there's a lot of talk about the rise of feminism, isn't there?
Yeah.
And fair play to women, because in the realm of humanity, let's forget about men and women, in the realm of humanity, the whole masculine way of living has been prioritized for a very, very, very long time. And without digging into men and women, maybe it is time for us to take the feminine qualities of life out of the shadow and into the light. It's certainly benefited my life, and it's certainly wonderful to hear my girlfriend say to me, Craig, your masculinity helps me to really soften into my femininity, and that it just touches my soul, really. But I'm a little bit worried, without being a feminine expert, a feminism scholar, that an aspect of feminine has been this competitive drive to earn as much as men, prove that they can do the same as men, prove that they don't need men. And would you say that, I don't want to put words into your mouth, but what I'm going to ask you is, has leaving the corporate industry and following your own path helped you to reclaim some of your own repressed feminine traits and qualities?
Oh, for sure, right? And I think you've brought up so many powerful things with what you just said. The first one is I'm a big advocate in this. It's like men and women need each other, right? They both have beautiful roles in this society. And I'm a woman who wholeheartedly believes in female rights. I know a lot of women are still repressed around the world, but I'm also a woman that believes in the power of a man who makes her feel safe and protects and provides and drives things forwards, right? So what I'm so mindful of with all of this is like I never want to encourage separateness, because I think the whole world is geared towards that, right? Let's separate ourselves from our own selves from each other. It's like we all need each other. This is this beautiful symbiotic relationship that we want to encourage. In terms of your question, I mean 100%, right? I was a woman um who is very capable and driven, and I get stuff done, right? And I always know there's a way and I can fix it. But I was absolutely exhausted from doing, uh, from not accessing like my body. I mean, if you'd asked me, I could tell you what I think, but I certainly couldn't have told you how I felt. Like sort of wore busyness and burnout as like a badge of honor. And since leaving the corporate world, the journey I've been on with the feminine's extraordinary, right? And this leads into a lot of the work I do. My body's the first thing I go to, right? How do I feel? Where am I being guided? I have this like mantra, which is like, my feminine leads and my masculine pushes it through, not the other way around. So that's my superpower, right? The more that I can be in my body and be in my emotions and be in my intuition and my connection to myself, God, divine, whatever you want to call it, the more magic happens in my life. B, the freer and happier I am. But C, the more impact I make. Like this is where the magic happens. So that's been biggest gift to me over the last 9 years, is the ability to connect with the feminine
Yeah, yeah.
energy.
Wow, what a journey. I'm guessing it's not all been roses and rainbows as well.
Is it ever, right? No, it hasn't. There's been, I'm talking a lot about change at the moment. There's been, many, many iterations of change. The journey from leaving the corporate world to setting up my business was, all the stuff that comes with that, as you know, the fear and the imposter and the ups and the
Oh
downs,
wow, yeah.
all of that. And then I think more recently, over the last 3 years, I've gone through a divorce, having a very successful on paper 7-figure coaching business and burning it all to the ground because I wanted to build something more soft and sustainable and aligned.
Yeah.
But that took a lot, right? That took a real journey into the underworld, the hero's journey. And there've been many, many times where I've wanted to rush periods of change or difficulty, and I think we see this a lot with leaders. Is it takes a certain skill to be able to hold discomfort,
Yeah.
and not try and push through it, and because in change and discomfort, there's always a gift, right?
For sure. And over the last 9 years, what's worked for you? Like, what have you explored, in order to come home to your body, in order to realize that everything is within you, in order to re-embrace the feminine side, the spontaneity, the playfulness, the gentleness, the softness, the expansion, the light. What's worked for you?
I mean, many, many things, but I think that it was incremental and it's certainly compounded over the years. It's not something like I just flicked a switch on. I found it, a deeply uncomfortable practice, and still do sometimes, right? If I get in times of stress and my back is against it, my default is like I want to push, figure it out. So I have to really watch that. So in terms of things that I've found is definitely like connection to nature,
Uh-huh.
encouraging stillness, right? And I find it now, like if I immediately go to chat GPT or I go and seek outside of me or something for an answer, I always feel unwell with it. It's my whole
Yeah,
body's like,
yeah,
this is
yeah,
off.
yeah,
Um, movement, morning practice, like that's because I see that a lot, with people. People say, well, I don't have a lot of time for this. You don't need to. It doesn't need to be like a 90-minute, well, I'll journal and meditate and do breath work and cold plunge it. I mean, all of those things are great, right? It's about an intentionality first and foremost, which is I want to connect more to my body and something greater. Show me the way and guide me, and I'm going to make space for you. I do my steps every morning. I'm going to walk and make space for you on those steps. The more that I did that and then I actually listened, right? So I haven't got AirPods in or I'm not like chatting on the phone.
mm,
I'm actually just listening. I started to cultivate this practice where I could hear guidance and I could hear my body.
mm.
Over the 9 years, I've actually tried to really simplify it for myself and clients. And this is ultimately what I do. And I think our bodies are, phenomenal sources of guides and
Mm,
wisdom.
mm,
I just ask my body, does this feel expansive or constricted? Does it feel like you're opening up here or closing down? So just the thought of having a conversation with Craig feel like you're opening up
mhm,
or constricting? Does that client who wants to work with you feel like you're being, and that's my guide. And if it feels
mm,
like my body's opening, it's like a yes. And if it feels like it's a constricting, it's a no. And if my head comes in and says, but this could happen and this could be good, it's a no. And the
mm.
more that I've honored those nudges from the body, the
Yeah.
more like my mind's been blown.
So it sounds like the journey's been one of a progressive redirection of your attention into your body and really tuning into the subtle language of the body, which is all these feelings and sensations and ripples and temperature and emotion. And it sounds like that's been a big part of your journey, right?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
Great, great. Um, so I know you work with men and women,
Mhm.
but as I said, I felt your passion come through one of your messages that you sent to me about some of the work you've done with men in previous years.
Mm.
Um, was there a moment when you thought, "Do you know what, even though I'm a woman, I can help men and I really want to help men? And was there anything that was the catalyst for you wanting to work with men? Was it your divorce, the frustrations around that? Was it anything else? Like what spurred you towards wanting to work with men?
It actually happened really like serendipity. I was running a workshop and there was a a famous footballer's wife who was in the audience, and she came up to me at the end and said, I think you could really help my husband. He's just coming to the end of his career and he's pretty lost. He was my first male client, and I'd only been coaching about a year then, so this was about 8 years ago. And I worked with her, such a lovely, lovely man. But this was a guy who had been told from the age of 14 what to eat, when to train, when to sleep, what to do, and he was, in his early 30s and quite frankly lost and clueless. And you'll see this. You work with a lot of rugby players.
Yeah.
His passion and purpose was sort of taken away from him, and he was like a little lost boy. And that was where the journey really began for me. And then it's funny, and Craig, this has often been the way. It will be clients or people who come into my world, and they'll want their husband to work with me. And it sort of grew from there. And then, eventually men were finding me or hearing about me from other men. So that's been the journey of it. And I definitely feel that was sort of a gift that was given to me. So I really love working with men.
Wonderful, wonderful. You mentioned the word intuition a lot, and I'd love to dig into that with you at some point here. And I'm guessing intuitively there's lots of directions you can go in with different clients and different needs. But generally speaking, if I'm a sportsman and I'm coming to the end of my career and I realize I need some help because I've just been conditioned to be this robot, I can't feel, I get triggered every 3 seconds with my wife, and I want to do something about it. What kind of approach would you use with someone like that? Like, what's your, I guess, what do you do? What's the how of your practice?
So I think first and foremost, it's about cultivating that feeling of safety and acceptance. So I want the man that walks in the room with me, and women, but the man that walks in the room with me to be able to bring all parts of him, right? The part of him that feels worried or angry. A lot of men, as you know, hold these roles and wear these masks, and it's exhausting. And so I want to be that place. So that's the first thing, is about cultivating trust and safety, so that they can bring everything. They can bring their 7-year-old little boy. They can bring all of it. That's my job, right? They don't always know which parts they're bringing, but I do. So that's the first place. Then from there, it's about helping them understand where a lot of that motivation to be successful is from. It's often seeking validation, often not always, but often their relationship with their parents, their father, where that comes from, and really reassuring that part of them that feels they don't have worth without it.
Yeah.
And then from there, once they've been able to sort of unload, I see it as like getting the rocks out of the backpack, the things that feel heavy. It's then about gently getting them to trust that they can start feeling in a place that's not going to mean everything's going to unravel, or that they won't be able to provide, or they're going to let anyone down. And then from there, it's about really, really deepening like radical honesty with themselves, right? What they really want, what's really going on. And then from there, I feel like we can start moving forwards and creating a plan. So that's the process. But you and I touched on this earlier. It depends on the person who walks in the room. I don't do cookie cutter coaching. I don't use frameworks. It's so intuitively led. When somebody sits in front of me, I just know. I know by the way they speak, the way they move, their energy works, exactly where we start, and we take it from there.
It's interesting you say that, because I remember when I left the world of professional rugby, I was working in rugby full time for 15 years, and I had to step away. I went on a crazy journey all around the world seeking, and then I set up my coaching business about 10 years ago, I guess. And I remember when I first started coaching, I'd be sat like this, and on the wall in front of me was a huge whiteboard with models.
Yeah, I remember it too. Yeah. The SMART frameworks and all of these that I know.
And then I worked with a therapist called Dr. Robert Masters, and he was in his 70s, and he worked intuitively. I'm like, intuitively? But the more I've re-inhabited my body and reclaimed my softness, actually, and reclaimed the connection with my heart, the more I am also now able to be intuitive. And I do the same thing. A client comes online and we just tune in. And because all those models are now embodied within me. You know, they're not stuck at the surface level. So yeah, it's interesting, the journey of a coach, isn't it? How we shift to that intuitive level. And I also believe that when we embody that intuitive way of guiding someone, that then becomes our default way of working with clients. We guide them into their own intuition. How do you do that with someone?
Or guide somebody into their own intuition.
Mm.
They've got to start trusting their body and not seeing their emotions as a dangerous world to be in.
Mm.
And I truly believe, so the reason that you and I can meet and hold people at the level we do is because we've met and held ourselves at that level, right?
Yeah.
I've held myself in deep and strong emotion. I don't mind how much emotion, how much rage or tears or shame anybody brings, I can hold it because it's not too much for me because I've met myself there, right?
Yeah.
So it is about that relationship that that person has with themselves first and foremost. You know, they've got to learn to trust. They've also got to learn that it's okay to have different desires or to want to shift or to think things are unfair. You know, I see this so often is a lot of people have this like 7-year-old running the show, right?
Of
Because
course, yeah.
the 7-year-old has come up to all of us at different points. It's like pulling at me, Caroline. I'm like, you know, shh. I don't want to hear it. Go away. You know, you're pushing it down into the box. They don't feel safe there, so they start playing out in a different area of your life. So I think part work's amazing. Shadow work is when you actually have a client who can start allowing those parts, like this part's angry or this part's scared, right? It doesn't need to act out, and it starts creating space. And then I think that when you take it deeper, like I think men are so beautiful in the way that the men that I've worked with really care. They really care about the people in their world. They take that responsibility really clearly, whether that's managing a team, a company, as a father, as a husband, as a son, as a brother. They take it really seriously. And they also want to feel safe themselves, but don't know where to get that. So we've got to start I keep coming back to that word safety. We've got to start cultivating that feeling of safety within themselves, right?
Yeah. Let's talk about language for a moment, because I'm fascinated to know, I guess, what language you sometimes use. And what I'm trying to say here is that a lot of men don't resonate with, mate, come and work with me, I'll get you into your heart, you know? Or mate, come and work with me, because at the root of all your suffering, you're 7-year-olds running the show, and you blame yourself for what happened when you were a kid. Mate, it's not your fault. Come and work with me. It just doesn't. You and I know that when we get them there eventually, which could take months, and they realise, shit, I don't love myself, do I? Let's go on that journey. But getting them through the door towards that moment is difficult, isn't it? Like in my work, for example, presence is a big one, you know, because every single man I've worked with has been told by his colleagues or his wife or his friends that he's not present, so he can resonate with a problem. Guys seem to resonate with self-regulation. They get it. It's something they can grasp hold onto and go into a training program to kind of improve. Like, what kind of language have you used to kind of get them through the door, if you will?
I mean, it's such an astute observation. I couldn't agree more. And I think I'm always really mindful of the language. You don't want to come across as really woo, because actually I see it as really, it's like basic energetics. You break everything down, it's energy, right? And you work with that, and whether it's flowing through your body, your mind, your life, whatever it is. So in terms of language, I really focus, because I think men think in terms of solutions, right? I'll make you feel happier. I'll make you feel less stressed, right? It's like giving them the solution rather than the modality or transformation that I'm going to take them on. I give them the end, like what's going to happen at the end of it, right? You're going to be a nice person to be around.
So moving towards a desired outcome as opposed to
Yeah.
you're stuck. You're going to
Yeah.
die if you don't work with me.
Yeah, exactly. It's like it's that I think it's
Yeah,
that outcome that they want. And unfortunately, and I think you probably see this in your work, but you'll have to let me know. It tends to be much more acute when men come to me.
yeah,
So they tend to have had often panic attacks, anxiety attacks, being real crisis points. They've let it go pretty far. Um, do you find that with a lot of the clients who come to you?
I have a mixed bag really. I have guys who, like one of my clients has never had a relationship and he's 65.
Hmm.
I have other guys who come out with a divorce, and but most of my guys are actually they've had some kind of awakening and they want more. I've created a program called Climbing the Second Mountain. It's like they've climbed the first mountain, they've got financial security, and then they realise, hang on a minute, I can't keep going like this. Who's this? This real book? What about my real book? Let's become the architect of the next mountain. So it's a mixed bag, really.
Okay. And I really I love to hear that about, I said this to you at the beginning about men who are awakening. 'Cause I think more and more men are for sure. And I find that really exciting because
Yeah,
if we can, the more of us that can be doing this work, and I think for any man that's listening to this, is this work goes so much further than the individual, right?
for
It
sure.
changes the children. It's like it shifts generational patterns. It
Yeah,
impacts your loved ones. Like this, what that's when I get really excited about it, is because it's not just that person there and it's stopping with them. It's all the generations, all the people who work with them, or the family members that are impacted by it. This ripple effect's happening all the
yeah.
time. So when a man's doing the work, it's not just for him, right?
Yeah, 100%. Do you know what? I don't know why, because I haven't got kids, but a lot of my clients, they have like minimum 3 kids. I've got one client with 5 kids, another client with 6 kids, and they're like super dad. I just can't believe they're amazing men, you know.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, so in your work with men in recent years, what are some of the challenges that you're seeing them present with?
Um, I would say one of the really uniting factors is they tend to be very successful on paper, but their internal world does not feel great.
Mm, mm,
And I think they feel a mixture of guilt about that, frustration, that their body won't quite get on board. So they're like, well, I've got all these things. Like, why don't I feel happy, or why don't I feel like I'm fulfilled, or why does this feel hard, or why do I
well,
feel so
the
disconnected?
the key word is feel, because you said feel 4 times then in
Yeah,
one sentence.
yeah,
That's the key word, right?
absolutely, 100%. So I think that's it. And I would say that, I mean, every man who sits in front of me has got to a point where it doesn't feel sustainable to
Mm,
carry
mm.
on living that way or in their head. And usually their body's starting to kick off, like I was saying, they're having physical symptoms. So that's one of the key things I see men come to me.
Mm.
I mean, I also have had, I worked with a younger guy recently, a professional golfer who was in his early 20s. Um, and I've worked with a few golfers, and it's an interesting industry, or a sports profession, because how in their heads they get, and when they
Oh
get in their
no.
heads too much, like they're on like the course and they just can't, they like, don't hit the ball there, and then the ball's going there, and then they're getting worse, and they get in their heads more and more.
Mm.
And I see that theme. It's again about getting them out of their butt. Okay, how do we want to create this? What's the vision here? What do we want the shot to look like? What's the fear driving why you're avoiding failing, or why
Mm.
you're taking it
Mm.
so
Mm.
personally and so hard, and where's that desire to be like approved come from, and
Yeah.
can we give that approval to yourself? And then their game starts changing, and it's such a joy to watch
Yeah.
these men.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and if a sportsman like a golfer's stuck in his head and running all these scripts,
Mm,
it's World War III inside his body,
mm,
right?
right. Right, yeah, and then it just becomes a self-fulfilling thing. I can't get it together, then they're getting stressed before they go out there, and then the press is on. It's like, and it just,
Yeah.
um, and I see that, with footballers I work with, is it's just they're not as glossy and exciting as we think these worlds are. They're pretty brutal and
Yeah.
cutthroat.
of course.
And they're performance machines, right?
Yeah,
And they
yeah,
have their use. And I'm not saying there's a lot of managers that do care about them, but that's a big theme, right? That's
yeah,
hard. Like that's a
yeah,
hard thing. You got to really dig deep to get some skills in environments like that.
yeah, yeah,
And a lot of these are sensitive men
yeah,
who do take it personally and who do find it really hard when they're being rejected or
yeah,
criticized or put
yeah,
on the bench.
yeah,
And they don't feel there's anyone they can talk to about it. I do think that we're starting to get better in the footballing world of them having people they can talk to and having
yeah,
more conscious like managers and leaders, which
yeah.
I'm pleased to see, but there's still a way to go for sure.
Yeah, I agree with you. There is still a way to go for sure, but compared to when I first started working in rugby, which is over like 30 years ago, there are some gems, there are some managers that are really doing the work. And I've mentioned one of my clients a lot on my podcast is a guy called Matty Pete. He's the head coach of Wigan Rugby, and it just blows me away how
That's-
accountable he is for his own work within the roles of his life. The head coach, the husband, the dad, the son, and for him to model that at the helm of a pretty famous rugby league team is definitely a step in the right direction.
Yeah, look at that impact, that wider impact that has for the players or people in the industry. This is why it's exciting to get men in leadership roles who are conscious and who've done the work. Like, this is
Yeah,
why, I want people to be inspired. Like, I always say, if a man feels they can't do it for themselves, think about doing it for the greater good or their family,
yeah.
right? Like, find the motivation somewhere else if you need to, but, do the work.
Okay, sportsman.
Hmm.
So, as you know, I've worked a lot in professional sport. I was a sportsman. I've been working in rugby on and off for 30 years. I still am. I've just come from Chile, helping them to prepare for next year's Rugby World Cup. And I keep one of my feet in that world because it's close to my heart and it's a real potential platform for transformation because a lot of people play sport, a lot of men and women play sport, and the senior coaches and the senior players especially, they have a real responsibility. They're seen as these elders, these father figures. So
Mm.
if the coaches and the more senior players can really start to do their own inner work and model um, authenticity and model presence and regulation and model the capacity to respond to stress as opposed to react to stress and model strength and but also model softness, model direction and also model spontaneity, ultimately modeling a wider range of leadership capacity.
Mhm.
Um, I really think the world can change.
Yeah.
So just give us a rundown of some of the work that you've done with sportsmen.
Yeah, so mine has been with individuals rather than clubs. Like I said, I've worked with footballers, some that are becoming to like retirement
Yeah,
or having difficult periods throughout their career, with some golfers, some other athletes. And there's a couple of things that I would say are, if I was going to look at case studies, I think the first one is the theme around people who are coming to the end of their career,
yeah,
um, and just feeling completely lost, right? And it's like they're
uh-huh,
sort of thrown out into the street without any real support and they don't know what to do. So everything in terms of the identity that they've associated themselves with just goes almost overnight. It's really
mm,
difficult. And I think that that's a big and important piece of work because
mm, mm,
I've seen those men go on to do work with youth programs, go to work with people who they're doing their own mentoring with, right? Because they've got the experience
mm-hmm,
to work with younger players on better financial management or being a bit more aware of the kind of people they're inviting into their life, having a trusted place that they can speak to or seek advice from. Like all of this is really, really important because, I believe that every person, and particularly, we say that we use the sports world as an example, are put in that unique position. But they get it, like you get it, right? You really, really get it. So
Mm.
we want to be encouraging people like you or people who've been in those roles of having gone through that world to be able to then come and mentor people at the other levels. And I get really excited about that work because we're changing it. We're changing it. We work with an 18 year,
Yeah,
17, 18, 19-year-old kid, right?
yeah, yeah,
I learned this and I fucked up here and I did this and
yeah,
don't go down this hole and don't let your ego get too big. Don't spend all your money.
yeah,
Be discerning about your relationships. Like it's okay to feel pressure and
yeah,
all of these things are important conversation. It's some of the mental health and some of these sports worlds are shocking.
yeah, of course.
And we see the big checks and we see, but these are human beings, right? So I think I always believe that when somebody comes to me, usually as a sports professional, there's usually a deeper calling because they're the kind of people that I tend to attract, and it's because
Yeah,
they're supposed to go out and do the work of helping other like younger generations or peers navigate through this,
for
and
sure.
that's like their calling. A bit like you, right? It's like your purpose work of okay, it makes sense why I did this work, had this journey, and why I'm being called to do this now
Yeah,
because it's needed.
yeah, great. It's great listening to you talk about working with young players as well.
Yeah, yeah,
I mean, I mentioned older players, but I mean, look, if people like you and me can get to the younger players, one of my clients is a professional rugby player. He was 19 when I started to work with him, and he just blows me away. I just can't believe the level of depth um, that we get to in our sessions, whether that's talking about addictions or porn or sexuality, or it's just amazing how deep he wants to go. So
yeah.
yeah, the work with young men within sport is also really really important.
Yeah, and I
Um,
think that, we're cultivating these amazing role models. I've got a 12-year-old son, he really looks up to these footballers. Like it matters what they're embodying and how
yeah,
they're showing
yeah,
up. It matters how they speak, how they respect people, how what they prioritize. It really matters. There's
yeah,
millions and millions of kids looking up to them. These are global figures and it matters. So how exciting is it when somebody does the work and they are
yeah,
conscious and they're prepared to go to a depth within themselves? What's that doing for the generations that are coming through? That's something that we should be really excited about.
yeah. It's interesting hearing you say the work as well,
Mm,
um, because there's so many ways to define the work, isn't there? You know, me and you could create a list of things that people could do to transform the way they think, feel, and act.
yeah,
Um, but a big part of it is, and I keep coming back to this, and it's a big part of my book that's coming out in a couple of months, is there's no way around it. We have to re-inhabit our bodies. We really, really do. We have to have a more intimate, non-reactive relationship with all the feelings and all the messages and all the wisdom in our body. There's no way around it. Even when I hear you say that some of the football players that they come to you and they feel lost. Well, you and I know that what they are lost in is the story of catastrophe, the story of what might happen, the story of fear, the story of failure. That's really what they are lost in. They're lost in a story that happens in the mind, which is a mirror of something that happened in the past. So the only way to turn that noise down is to come home to the body, right?
right. Yeah. Yeah, and it's not something that's encouraged, right, in masculinity,
Mm.
um, is to lean into what we feel and to make space for that. And I'm really conscious of that with my children. I won't ask them what they think, I'll ask them what they feel. So if something comes up and I won't say, well, what do you think about that? I'll say, what do you feel about that?
Yeah.
Because I want to teach them from an early age that the place that they check is within their body, not in their minds.
Mm. Mm.
Um, and I think that, we did touch on regulation. And I think this is, again, something that I see with my children is like my job is not to stop them from experiencing pain and difficulties. I do my best to create a safe and loving environment that things are going to happen. But my job is to be able to help them be able to trust having big emotions and to hold themselves through it.
Yeah.
That's an amazing gift that you can give your child and give yourself, right? If
Yeah.
all of us knew how to hold ourselves in those emotions and hold ourselves with that journey into the body, the world would look like a very different place, right?
Well,
Um,
the world would be safer, wouldn't it?
yeah, yeah, it really would. These um, leaders who are out there doing these horrendous things are people who are living from
Uh-huh.
the mind, who are living from the ego, proving validation, um, greed, arrogance, all of the really sort of nasty, toxic.
Mm.
And look, it goes the other way. We talk about the patriarchy, which we've had, for a long time now. We had the matriarchy before that,
Of
thousands of
course,
years.
of course, of
That
course,
didn't work either, right?
of
So it's
course.
not about one being better than the other. It's like about the blend of both.
100%. And even within the so-called patriarchal realm, I could speak to 30 guys who I grew up with,
Hmm.
and probably most of them had a really dominant matriarchal mother.
Yeah, yeah,
So it's we're all in it together, aren't we?
100%. Yeah, we really are.
Um, I know I've touched this earlier on, but I'm still interested in your life so far.
Yeah.
From being a little girl to the woman you are now.
Mm.
What have been the main frustrations you've had around men?
What a great question. Um, Not taking their responsibility to make women feel safe.
Mm,
Seriously,
mm.
I've had many times where I've not felt safe. You know. Um.
So is,
Mhm. Of
I want to
course,
intervene to try and to
of
help
course.
you through the process because I realise it's a difficult question to answer.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
when you say not feeling safe, is that
Yeah.
due to the classic male kind of righteousness, deflection, flipping it back, withdrawal, accusations?
I think that there's been different things. I think certainly, and I've had some wonderful experience with men.
Mm,
And my dad's, one of the close people in my life. My brother, I've got very close male friends. But being in situations where I felt that it was transactional, it was based on what they might be able to get from you, whether that was something sexual or
yeah,
physical, feeling that there was an undercurrent of
yeah,
you being defined by the way that you look, right?
mm,
So,
mm,
not always feeling safe to be in full expression of yourself in case it was taken the wrong way, or you were too sexy, or you were too
yeah,
this, or
yeah,
like the responsibility being placed on the
yeah,
woman. um and then I think from that is like being around a man, and often more physical dominance because they tend to be bigger, who can't emotionally regulate. Is That is scary. it's
mm,
it's scary to be around
yeah,
that. Women, we are um often walking around sort of with that awareness of
yeah,
unpredictability. So I think that's another thing. So I think that's one of the frustrations. Another big frustration, Craig, is why men won't, not all men, but why men are not prepared to take the self responsibility to
mm,
deal with their
mm,
shadows and their blocks, because they've got the capability, right? These are
yeah,
often really driven people who make everything else happen in their life.
yeah,
Surely this is the most important, right? So I get frustrated there of like it doesn't matter, or like it's self indulgent, and it's none of those things, right? I see it as a responsibility
yeah, yeah,
person
yeah,
to do that, and
yeah,
that's not trying to be righteous or judgmental, but I think
yeah.
that we should be seeing more and more men who are prepared to do that.
Yeah, responsibility is a really important word within that next stage of male leadership as well, because there's just this paradigm of male leadership where we all download that to have a purpose in life, you need a successful vocation and you need to be making money. And it's almost as if the intimate relationship becomes like a secondary kind of component. And I'm 54 and it's took me over 50 years to realise that. Yes, I love my job. I do love my job. I love working with people. I love being in service with people. I love doing men's work. But right now, the greatest purpose in life and where I can bring the greatest safety to the planet is actually through my capacity to be safe with my current partner.
There you
So the
go.
first time in my look, I still have a mission. I'm not going to put her like on a pedestal, but for the first
Yeah.
time ever in recent times, like if I can learn to love her unconditionally in a regulated state most of the time and hold her in that masculine container, I get the best of her, she gets the best out of me. And imagine if more men could do that, then women wouldn't have to walk around on the streets with headphones in, looking straight forwards because they don't want to catch the eye of a man. You know that
Yeah.
we would become we would return in union again. So
I think that's really
yeah, you know,
beautiful. And I think that that is, well, we touched on this earlier, as I reflect on this as I, open up to having someone in my life again after my divorce. And I think, when I like really felt into what's important for me, it's like a man who makes me feel safe. Like I know how to lead and I know how to get things done, but I also want to be able to have somebody who can hold me in all of the ways, right? And who
yeah, for sure,
is a place where I can be a full expression of myself, whatever my crazy self, my quiet self, my loud self, my powerful self, intuitive self, whatever it is. So, what a
yeah,
beautiful gift is that to me if I get to have that. But then also the work that then enables me to go on and do because I've got that partnership that's a container
yeah,
for me. So I think it again, for your partner, I don't know what she whether she works or what she does, but that's going to have an impact on how she shows up in whatever role she has in the world,
yeah,
right?
for sure, for sure. Again, you've touched on something fascinating there in something that you said. You said that in order for you to feel safe, you want a man, and you're talking about your intimate partner, but
Yeah.
it relates to any man, doesn't it? It relates to men in leadership positions as well,
Hmm.
father, uncle, whoever. You mentioned that you want him to be able to hold you
Yeah.
in a regulated way in all your capacities, in all your different expressions of humanity.
Yeah.
That's a really interesting point, Caroline, because what I find is really common in men is, and you mentioned earlier, parts.
Mm.
Um, so a man will come to me and I'll ask him questions. I'll say, and sometimes I'll write it on a whiteboard. I'll write different parts. I might write the playful part, the sexy part, the nurturing part, the motherly part, um, the supportive part, and then I'll write the confused part, the fearful part, the sad part, joyful part, and it's evident that tick, 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 tick. But what men struggle with is the part of a woman that's sad,
Yeah.
the part of a woman that is scared, the part of a woman that is confused. And when we dig into it and we've spoke about the work, a
Mm.
big part of a man's work is learning to have a more loving, accepting relationship of his own sadness, his own confusion, and his own fear. If he doesn't, the mirror coming back at him will always trigger the life out of him.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I couldn't be nodding more vehemently. Yeah, I mean, you can only meet somebody to the level of which you've met yourself. So I bring insecurity or I bring worry, and you're used to having that relationship with yourself where you fix it, run away from it. That's going to be mirrored back to
Yeah,
me, right?
for
When
sure.
and I think particularly, that's been something that I've, being completely vulnerable here. That's something that I've, struggled with as a successful woman who's built a business, has a team, is financially independent, is that I'm not always the one that's leading, right? I'm not always the one that's more able to emotionally regulate or more
Mm,
able to
mm,
communicate. It's a tricky one, that, because I think
yeah,
that um, I really believe that with all women. I really believe that is that women don't they might lead at work, but they don't want to
yeah.
lead at home.
No,
So
no.
that's what I believe.
Yeah, me too, me too. A lot of it comes down to capacity as well in relationship. I heard Brené Brown say something that I've used She says she goes home to her husband and they have this daily practice where they'll get home and they'll look at each other and they'll say, right, I've got 80% capacity, but I've only got 20% capacity, right? So I need you to hold me, or the opposite way around. You know, it relates to capacity, and capacity. Again, we're coming back to nervous system regulation.
Yeah.
Capacity, awareness, whatever we want to call it, it's the same thing. This capacity and growing this capacity is actually what reestablishes safety.
Yeah, because I think there's one thing, isn't there? You know, I've experienced that to have real chemistry with somebody, but it takes a lot more than that to make a relationship work. It does take capacity. It takes a willingness to show up, and to be committed to to doing it together in the hard moments. It's very hard to do with somebody who's avoiding themselves, is what I've realized. And these are good, you know, good men who provide and love and feel, but just don't have the capacity or have never found the way to be with those parts of themselves without running from them. And then when it comes up in a relationship, they want to run, right? That's their default. You know, it's really important, I think, as a woman, when that happens, is that you don't then click into chase and pursuit, but you let them go and let each person find their way.
I'm glad that you just steered towards speaking about women then, actually, because my next question is going to be, for women out there that might be listening to this, or for women out there that are having some challenges with the men in their lives, they're frustrated, they want them to change. What message do you have for those women? If you had a message for those women in terms of what they could do to guide a man without trying to control him, because you know, you've worked with men. Men do not like to be controlled or like to be told what to do. They do not. Like, what message do you have for those women who obviously care about their men, but they're really pissed off?
Yeah, and I see this a lot. Look, I see a lot that women want their men to be more in the masculine energy, right? They want them to step up, they want them to provide, they want them to lead. That's not going to be done by you bringing more masculine energy to the situation and pushing harder, right? Pushing them harder, coercing them, forcing them, coaching them, mothering them. It's not the way that it's done. That's often what I see, is like the frustration comes out of like nagging and pushing, and like the man just starts retreating, and it almost has like a feminine quality, like, you know, it sort of starts becoming a bit more passive, right? And then the woman comes in and then it comes in harder on the masculine, the man goes more into passivity, and so it doesn't get met there. So I think the first thing is about seeing your man in his power, right, in his potentiality, not like what you wish he could be, but actually a lot of women view their men from a disempowered state. What about seeing them in a more powerful way? And then I think as well that not all men, but a lot of men are just trying to do the right thing, right? So this is where it really comes down to communication. So it's about, and I say communication, it's communication with an understanding that it might not be your timeline, that men often do need time to retreat, go into their cave to digest and to process. So I think that what's really, really important is the opportunity for a woman to speak her truth, right, about what she needs from the heart, not from, I want you to do this. And it's like, I feel safe when you behave like this. Safety is really important to me. Like, and then and giving the man the opportunity to hear you, and then go away and trusting him to do what he chooses to do with that, as a man, as a leader, as a provider, and almost taking a step back and watching. And it's not a comfortable thing to do, but it enables both parties to kind of step into these roles. Does that make sense? Like that's the magic.
Yeah. And you know, we spoke about self-regulation, but it applies to women too, right?
Of course, everything we're talking about, but yeah, of course. I mean, yes, because how often does it happen, right? Where we're in a partnership, and before you know it, you've got two basically adults in their childlike states going at
Mm,
each other because they're
mm,
triggered.
yeah, for sure.
So we all do it. It's the ability to be able to see that because no good comes of like two toddlers like having a screaming match at each other or blaming each other or doing those things. And look, it's the nature of being human. This isn't about being perfect, but I think it's really like worth asking yourself, like, who's the person who's showing up at the moment for these conversations, these arguments, these moments of intimacy? Is it my inner child? Is it my saboteur? Is it my like protector? Is it my alpha? Is starting to become aware of that.
Yeah,
But I believe in most relationships, people want to do better, right? And they want that connection. They've just lost their way to find it.
yeah,
So what I would encourage everybody to do is you find the connection with yourself first, because if you've got two people and they're both doing that, they come together for a different place.
yeah, 100%. So do your own work and bring that into the relationship.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, Question was in my head then. So it sounds like in your Luke, we know there's a lot of shit going on in the world, but it sounds like in your world and in my world, in the realm of male leadership, we're seeing transformation. We're seeing some great men. We're seeing a lot of effort. We see men that want to do the work, right?
Yeah, I think there's a lot to be encouraged by,
Yeah.
and this is the issue at the moment, isn't it? We're fed consistently, whether it's the news or social media,
Mm.
the horrors of things that are going on in the world, and it's like this sort of bigger force that wants us to stay in like
Yeah.
desperation and that things aren't getting better. I actually believe they are. I
Yeah.
believe that a lot of what we're seeing at the moment is because it's literally being purged. I think
Yeah.
things are coming out from the light. Like with anything that's being detoxified, it has to come
Yeah.
out.
I hear
So I
you.
do. I do believe that the world is getting better. I believe that there's a lot of people doing the work. A lot of men are doing the work.
Mm.
I think we're seeing children who are so much more conscious. I
Mm.
have conversations with my friends about this. It's like our kids just seem to be different. Like the way that they express, the way that they show up, like the way that they care, how attuned they are, the deep empathy skills.
Mm.
I think there's a lot to be encouraged by.
Great. And Caroline, I've got a final question for you.
Sure.
So imagine you and I are watching this movie. We're watching this movie, and it's a movie about male leadership.
Mm.
And we're at a stage in the movie where we can see a little bit of transformation and happening. What do you want to see in the next chapter of the movie?
I want to see it as like a rite of passage that any male leader spends time sitting with himself,
Mm.
understanding himself, regulating himself, holding space for himself. Like it's like a rite of passage that everybody goes through. And then when they go through that relationship they have with themselves ripples out to the relationship they have with everybody else that they're leading.
Yeah. Um, I'm glad you ended on rites of passage because transformation is a rites of passage.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, it seems to be that the doorway through rites of passage is one of pain and struggle or discomfort. And so I guess my message to the men is um, pain is a message, struggle is a message, discomfort is a message. If you tune into your body, you'll understand this message is not an enemy, it's not an imposter, it's not an inner critic, it's just a message from your body that says it's time to transform and it's time to reclaim what you had to repress growing up as a kid.
Yeah, and you're not alone, right?
Yeah, and you're
We're
not
all
alone.
we're all walking through this. Like
Yeah.
in our own way, every single one of us is walking through this, and there is
Mm.
more support than you realize. Whether it's
Yeah.
like your friends or your family members, or you want to get a coach, a mentor, whatever it is. There is so much support out there these days. You're not alone. And even if you were going to strip it back, you've always got yourself. You are strong enough to be able to hold yourself and all the parts. Just stop giving yourself a hard time. You've never been taught how to do it. So of course it feels a bit
Yeah.
scary and unfamiliar. familiar, but you've got this.
And Caroline, if your life was a book and your readers are avidly reading it and getting excited, what do they want to see in the next chapter?
My goodness, what love these questions, Craig. I think a big thing for me at the moment is about that love coming
Yeah,
in and
yeah,
that partnership, and somebody who makes me feel truly safe, and the world's a better place because of our partnership, right? Not just for each other, but
mm,
the ripple effect it has. And I
wonderful.
feel really excited to see what happens when I'm in the energy of somebody like that
Yeah,
with with how I can show up in the world. So I think
great.
that's what the next chapter would be.
Do you want me to start a subscription model with some of
I
my
knew you
clients?
were getting this. It's like I've gone on a dating app and I'm like doing my video. Oh my goodness, honestly.
Well, I'd like to
Craig the
end by
matchmaker.
I'd like to end by saying you deserve it, Caroline.
Oh, thank you. Thanks,
Yeah,
Craig. That's really
as we all
kind of
do,
you.
as we all do. Um,
Yeah.
and Caroline, where can the listeners and the viewers find more about you and your work?
So Instagram's a good place, at Caroline Britton Coaching. Like that's the main platform really that I'm on.
Got you. Yeah,
Um, and then I also have a website which is caroline-britton.com. So that's another good place to start.
great. So, Caroline, what a conversation. I've really loved it.
Yeah, I've loved
Luke,
it.
maybe we can do another one in the future on the rites of passage. We got juicy at the end there. But I've loved speaking to you, and I wish you a great week. And
Oh, thank you,
yeah,
Craig.